Did you miss me? If you don't even know who I am, well, welcome to my show. This is Now Until Up, and I'm Victor Purcell. And I took a few weeks off from recording. I wanted to make sure that I was talking about things that would add value to the people who are watching this platform. And I think I have been doing that, but I just wanted to take some time, not to feel like I was rushing to just put out content because I do have a life outside of this. And I think that it's important to try not to try too hard, if that makes any sense. I don't feel like that's what I was doing, but here I am. And this is going to be a good show. Like, this is a good time in the hybrid fitness space. And we just had the Hyrox World Championships in Manchester, UK. And we had some good showings out here. We had United States won in the men's elite field, first place. Hunter McIntyre came back and showed and backed up his talk. And we also had Lauren Weeks, who came in first place in the women's elite field. So two OGs in the game, and it's good to see those two back. Last year, Lauren Weeks was pregnant, and she still raced. And, it just goes to show that if you're a beast, whether you're pregnant or not, it might have slowed her down, but now she doesn't have that extra weight on her, and she just came through and showed everybody who she was and reminded everybody. So, but it was a lot of things happened. I had a guess that Americans would have at least two spots on each podium, and I thought I was going to, get that guess at the end. I didn't put any money on that, but Ryan Kent and Tobias from Germany tied. So Ryan Kent ended up, I guess, having smaller feet. And Tobias basically came in a toenail ahead of Ryan Kent. But if you look at the board, they have the same time. So it's one of those photo finishes where Ryan Kent ended up coming in fourth place. So that kind of threw off my guess. But the women all came in 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the elite field. So it was cool to watch, and I'll get into some of the topics here, but we're going to talk about the coverage. So this was a new coverage. Looks like they had somebody from Europe do the coverage over there, and we also have. I'm going to talk about some of the results from the team. The men's doubles and the women's doubles. Then we have our some of just the faster times overall of the day, not in the elite field. And then I want to talk about some other things that I've noticed in this race, like tactics. So there's been a lot of talk about qualifying and what should it take for you to qualify for a world championship. And I think what we got to see during this particular world championship is tactics matter. It's not just about times. So we also have, that's Hyrox related. I'm going to talk about some other things non-Hyrox related. My 40th birthday is coming up, and I did something today, a challenge today, and I'll get into that, and I'll explain why I'm wearing this headband. Because if you have OCD, you'll thank me for wearing this headband on this show. So, but anyway, so let's get into some of these other results here. So we have outside of the first place people that I talked about, we also have men's doubles. So the United States came out on top on that. And I know some people don't like us talking about the countries, but I think it does matter because it lets you know kind of where the pool of athletes are. And when I look at the results, and I'll get into that, it tells me a lot, right? So, but the U.S. men's doubles, Taylor Haney and Colin Stifer, and they were in the 30 to 39 age group. But they had the fastest time of the day. So I'm not going to go down the list. You can check all of those things on Hyrox.com. But Women's doubles, Switzerland came out on top. Rebecca Nathier and Miriam von Roher, and that was the under 29 age group, but they had the fastest women's doubles time of the day. So anyway, again, I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds of every place, first, second, third, because there's plenty of posts on Instagram, and if you go on the website, you can look into those things. I want to talk about some of the storylines that I think are important. So again, I talked about Ryan Kent and Tobias tying, but one person like edging with the photo finish. And that was a big deal. That just goes to show you got to keep pushing to the end. I'm not saying that Ryan Kent didn't. He finished in 58 minutes. So obviously, like, that's crazy on a grid format. But, you know, sometimes that extra little dive over the line, you might have to do that to get that top three placement. And it was good to see Tobias back at this race because he couldn't race at last year's World Championship because some complications from, and we also had another athlete in the women's field this year who had a heart issue. I don't recall her name, but she qualified for Elite 15, but she hasn't been able to train because she had like a heart issue. So I know there's definitely some things out there that people have been dealing with, but that is one thing. Then we have David Magida. So David Magida, for those of you who watch, you saw that he was grimacing basically from the second station. And I train at his gym, so I don't necessarily train with him all the time or anything like that, but I train at his gym. I do the hybrid classes at his gym, and but I do track workouts with Magida, and he's had back issues for at least the last month or so, where for the first time that I've seen, he's had to like scale back some of his interval sessions, and we would still do them because it was in the plan, but he might have to do some mobility for his back or the extra stretching to warm his back up. So that's something he's been dealing with. I didn't necessarily know how bad it was because he didn't really talk too much about it. I mean, he would mention it when, you know, at the track session if he had to do that. But, yeah, it just goes to show, like, he still showed up. He still showed up to race and hope for the best. But sometimes, you know, your body and your health tells you, you know, you got to slow down. I mean, he'll be back. I'm sure I'll get an opportunity to talk to him. I haven't had him on the show yet. I will. I want to do like a live face-to-face interview, but now since World Championships is over, I'll be able to do that, and we'll get some more details about, you know, a lot of things that you guys may want to hear about. So, so that's definitely one of the storylines here, and I think looking at the results, so you can go on the Hyrox website, and I think there's going to be a lot of discussion around qualifying and what is the standard for qualifying in Hyrox. So when I look at the top 25 men's, and not elite, but the men's pro, the top 25 times at World Championships this weekend. So there are no Americans. Oh, no, there's one American in the top 25 times. So number 18, Keith Hardwick. So he's in the 30 to 34 age group, and he has for the day, a top 25 time out of 456 men. And, you know, that's one person. I would say this. The qualification standard, so you go to a race. A lot of the top athletes in the men's division, the men's pro division, if they were to race at World Championships, and not in the Elite 15, but World Championships, they would have been in the top 25. I mean, I could go down the list of people who raced in the United States. But the thing is, when you qualify, you can qualify in using the men's pro weight, and there might be one slot for your age group. So you can finish in under an hour and run in the men's pro group, men's pro weight, and you can qualify for world championships, but there might be only one slot at a U.S. race to qualify at for world championships, and that's interesting because we have some fast people here, and if you look at the times, they're faster than a lot of the people. So you don't necessarily. I'm not saying that these people aren't, great athletes, and a lot of people are faster than me, right? So, but I'm saying you're not necessarily getting the top people because you might only have one slot for 35 to 39 to qualify at like New York for world championships. Where if you run in the open category, you still qualify for world championships. Say if you come in first place or maybe second place, depending on how many slots there are. But you aren't necessarily getting that first place athlete may not be faster overall than the person who came in second place in the pro division because it's just a different pool of athletes. So I'm not saying that everybody needs to change anything, but I'll just say that it's not necessarily going to give you all of the top United States people because we don't have so many races here in the U.S. And there's way more races in other countries in Europe that give people an opportunity to qualify for these races. And we'll see what happens. I mean, I think you're going to start seeing people that usually run in the men's pro division drop down to the men's open division just to be able to get a ticket to world championships. And people might get mad. I remember it was a scenario where a guy like set the world record in the open division, but he was an elite 15 guy, right? I don't recall his name. It's a guy it was elite 15 last year. I don't think it was in it this year. But my point is, people were like kind of like salty about that, right? So it just goes to show that if you want to go and compete, even if it's not in an elite 15, there's nobody to tell you that you shouldn't also want to compete in the men's pro division at world championships. Last year, David Magida, who was also the North American championship this year, the North American champion this year, and was hurt at world championship this year. But last year, he didn't qualify for the elite 15, right? And he also was sub 1 hour in the fastest person overall for the day for the men's pro and all age groups combined, right? So it's a conversation. I'm not sitting here to say that it's not fair the way that it's set up. I do think that it's fair the way that it's set up, but I think maybe it could be done differently, right? I think the rules are set at the beginning of the season, so whoever makes it, right? And it is what it is. But I do think they should mess around with the rules a little bit. I think they could make it a little bit more equitable and maybe look at placing in a race, a top three, weigh that a little bit more than times because it just gets confusing in my opinion. So that's my take on that, and we'll see what happens. I know there's been some discussions with the elite athletes. I hope they bring in some non-elite athletes, people from different age groups to talk about this this weekend in Manchester, and just to get a little bit of feedback from the people who are competing at the different levels, because it's not just one level, right? There's multiple levels of people that are wanting to show up and wanting to have part of this experience, and I think that they should just see what ideas are out there, right? Just be open to the ideas so we can all see the sport grow, because that's really what we want to see. So, all right. So let's get into race tactics, and this is something that I want to talk about because I was listening to the Running Public, and they mentioned some changes in Olympic qualifying for track and field. So I got this from a website. I don't recall the source. Okay, letsrun.com. And basically, World Athletics announced a series of changes to its major championships, the most significant of which is that qualification to the next round in distance events, 1,500, 5K, 3K steeple will be based on place only, not time. Again, the Olympics in the world athletics are track and field are basing their qualification on race placement, not race time, because there's ways to game the system. So what this does is it makes it where you are more likely to see the top athletes racing all of the different heats, because you can sit out. If you've ever watched track and field, you might see like an open lane. Well, that's not going to happen if they do it like this. If they're basing it on place, you're going to see all the lanes full of track and field athletes. So I do think that is being done because there's no one perfect way to do it, but they want to make tactics matter. So when we look at times, right, we look at Hunter's time was like 56 something minutes for when he won the championship this time, and he was moving like it wasn't even close, right? It's not the first time we've seen that, but his time being 56 something minutes, he also set the world record at a Spanish course for 54 something minutes, right? And it's not to say that he wasn't more fit today, but the course was a little different, so the time was different. Well, I'll just say this. There's been enough conversation around courses varying, and we're talking about people missing qualifying spots for mere seconds. Like, it could be 5 seconds, 1 second, and they didn't race the same day. They didn't race the same course. And you got the same guys like David Magida, who won the North American Championship, who beat basically, well, I would say him and Dylan, he said he didn't have the best day. I mean, he came in 14th, but Dylan came in second place at North American Championships, and they beat a lot of the guys who were like number 3 and number 4, right, and number 5 at the World Championships, and they beat them because it was tactics. Like, it's not that you have to just go and gun it on every single station. There's people who show up and they might, follow another person's pace because they're willing to wait it out because they know they can, hit the burners on the last segment of the race. Or there's somebody who may, like Hunter, can hit the burners early on because he knows it's going to be difficult for people to catch up to him. So he'll take that risk. So you got these athletes that are taking risk because they're actually competing. They're not just looking for PRs. They're not just looking to just get a good time, because now they have to sit here and look at the next person, versus you can go to a venue that's fast and you might have 4 people that race that day that may end up qualifying for the Elite 15. But it's not like people are getting paid a massive amount of money that can just go fly to every single race around the world and kind of game the system. Not to say that's what people are doing, but I don't think the financials would allow that for most of these athletes to go to what's known as like the faster courses, because they're consistently slightly faster for certain athletes. And I think that's also another thing. It's not going to be faster for every athlete. So if you're a runner, and the running course maybe is less laps, it might be more beneficial, because when I raced in London, it was a 2-lap course. Like, that was, so you're just running on a straightaway for most of the running. And that benefits basically anybody who's a fast runner, because you don't have to make your turns constantly. Like, when we go to New York, the course there, instead of 2 laps at the London course, the New York course is like almost 4 laps. So you just got all of these turns and all of these slowdowns, and it's just something to consider. I mean, we talked about, a lot of people talk about the sleds being heavier in certain places, and I will say they are. I've raced outside of the U.S., and it was a little different, but I wouldn't say it was a huge difference. But either way, now we're talking about race tactics and we can watch these races on the internet, and you can see that certain people scale it back and then they pop up out of nowhere and they end up on the podium. In 2021, we watched multiple athletes edge out some of the more well-known names and hit the podium. Like Hunter didn't win in 2021, right? He raced, but those tactics, you had guys come in on the wall balls or come in because that was their strength, so they didn't necessarily gun it until the end. So again, racing for time is okay in certain instances, but I think there needs to be more weight on placement because you have your regionals, right? So your regionals next season are going to be the North American Championship is going to be in Washington D.C. This is where I'm located now. So you got that. You're going to have a Hong Kong. So you're going to have an Asia regional, and then you're going to have 2 European regionals. So that's going to be 12 slots that are available for people to qualify based on placement. But it's just those 4 races. So there is more of an emphasis on placement only in the Elite 15, but you have to be the top 15 to even race in the Elite 15 at any of those races, right? So you have to be selected. It's not just like whoever shows up that day. It's the selected people at the regionals from the other races. So it still is putting this emphasis on time that I think it's a little imbalanced. But I mean, I'm open to hear people with their ideas about how to make it work, and not to say it's not working, but to make it work a little bit better, right? So yeah, so that's my take on that, and I do think that when you look at the times, like you got a lot of people that are running sub 1 hours now, and for women, a lot of sub 105s. We had 2 this year, one in the World Championship and one during the season, sub 1 hours with Meg Jacoby and Lauren Weeks at World Championships this time. So you have these fast times, but there's a lot of people that are like close in time worldwide that when they go and race together, it's not really that competitive. So that's just something it's evidence because it's not as competitive anymore when people have to see each other at the same venue. Then it gets a little bit weird because now these athletes with these tactics who have the experience and they know how to win that day, or they know how to get on the podium. So it's not just getting the PR. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I would like to see at regionals. I would like to see if they're going to do this time thing, right? Open it up. Don't do 15 at the regionals. Why do 15 at World Championships? Like keep the World Championships the way it is, but if you want to make things seem more equitable, do a top 30. Because we're talking about the whole world at this point, and you're narrowing it down to seconds in course differences. Now you got too many people. You're going to have races in Dubai. You're going to have all these different places happening throughout the season. Open it up to about 30 people. If you open it up to about 30 people, you're going to get less pushback. So Hyrox, maybe that's – and even if you had to do 2 heats, if you had to do 2 heats back to back, do it. But at least the people that are racing that day know that they have a chance, right? There's an opportunity for them to be one of the 3. It may not look as good on the, to see the first person cross the line, but that's okay. I think it would be something to have more participation. It's a mass participation sport. It would be something that I think would add value to the sport to expand it to 30. And maybe that means you can't do the grid layout. I don't know. But it's too many athletes that are close in time to tell someone, well, you're not good enough, right? Because they are good enough. And it's just when they show up in the same venue, they prove that they're good enough, but now they can't even race. So that's my take on that. I'll leave it at that because, last comment I'll say on that is there will be 12 slots. Like if you come in the top 3 at any of next season's regionals, now that's out of 15, you can come in top 3 at a regional and basically you have 12 different people get a placement at a regional. Now, if I was an athlete who qualified for world championships, would I go to another regional to race? Maybe not. If I was in Europe, I probably would do both European races. If I was in Asia, I probably wouldn't go anywhere else. If I'm in the United States, I probably wouldn't go to Europe to do another one. Um, but we'll see what happens, because like there's been scenarios this past season where it's not like you had 6 slots that were available from the regionals, but it wasn't like 6 different people who got those slots. I think it was like maybe 3 or 4 or something like that because you had repeat winners. At least on the women's side, I think it was like repeats. So, we'll see what happens there. And I want to talk about the coverage. So they use Twitch.tv and they used a company named, what is this company? It is like Spontent or something like that. Yeah, Spontent. SPONTNT is the Twitch page, and it was pretty good. I was impressed. I think the video quality was great. I think the commentary and the audio quality was good. You had the Rock's Life represented there. You had Eric there, and yeah, I mean, I can't remember the lady's name. I've never seen her before, but she was very good. The lady that was commentating as well, she did a good job. And I do have some, opinions about, like, there's a lot of comments. I was participating in the comments, the chats on the side while I was watching it, and I think that they should keep that going. I would say this, do whatever they did there, keep that going, and maybe that can be repeated at some of the other venues. I'm not sure of the logistics or how much it may cost to do that, but I think maybe some of the other brands that have been covering some of the different races could take some notes from whoever did this race, whoever covered this race, and I would like to see some of our U.S. races covered in the same fashion. When it comes to the commentary, and these are some of the comments that came in on the chat during the thing. So when Hunter won, there were obviously other people racing, right? So because he gave it first, so there's 14 other people on the floor. Instead of putting Hunter on the big screen or putting Lauren on the big screen, use the little screen at the right hand corner because we can still hear them, right? So we hear what they're saying. We want to hear what they're saying after the race, and we can see them too, but still keep the big part of the screen on the people who are still racing at the wall balls. So that's a comment that came up, and I agree with that because that's kind of how they do it in the NBA. You don't necessarily, like professional sports in the United States, I can't speak for how they do football or soccer or whatever you want to call it, but in other parts of the world. But you'll have your commentary going, but you still have the game on the main screen because that's what people showed up to watch, and we all listen to the commentary. So that's one thing. So the beginning festivities. So they called out all the countries. I think that there is some entertainment value. So last year when I was at World Championships in Vegas, it was a dope experience. I really enjoyed the the vibe during that when they called out each country and everybody took their sections or whatever in the stands. That does not necessarily reflect on video. When we're watching it, we're watching the national anthem. I think you show the national anthem, but we don't really need to see everything. We don't need to see what's happening live when we're watching it on Twitch, right? Because we don't really get it. We don't feel it the same way. Still do what you're doing. I'm not saying change the actual event, What I'm saying is maybe have separate commentary happening while that's going on, because the viewer isn't getting it the same way. So whether you're talking about the athletes in the Elite 15, you're talking about the sport, because a lot of the people who were on the Twitch didn't really know that much about Hyrox. People were asking like, "What is this?" So I don't know how Twitch works in terms of like spreading things that are like being streamed live. Maybe like something that's popular, like there was thousands of people on here watching, right? So maybe talk about the athletes, talk about the Elite 15 as the festivities are going on in the background, and cut screen here and there, but don't expect the viewers to really care as much about what's happening there. We showed up to see the race, so yeah. So that's that, and but it was good. Like that's just feedback, constructive criticism, because I'm not saying that they did a bad job. I was impressed. At the end of the day, they picked good commentators and everything. The seeing the race. They're just gonna get better, right? So, so yeah, and let's see what else do we have here. So that's all I really have about Hyrox. So I want to get into something not Hyrox related. I guess there's a little drop of Hyrox in this, what I'm about to talk about. So today I ran 40 laps around the track with 40-second rest, and I used my like goal, I'll say goal, Hyrox race pace for each lap. And basically I had like a range, right? So it was like 7 minutes to 7:30 per mile pace. So I ended up, most of my laps were around like 146, 149 until like later on in the laps I got in like 150, 151. But it was pretty interesting. I'd never done anything like that. That's about 10 miles. I ended up doing almost 11 miles. I think I thought I skipped a couple times, so I just like kind of just I was like, let me do this one again, because I didn't want to cheat the system. So, but 40 laps, that's 400 meters times 40, and that's a good workout. I think it's more mechanical, because once I got tired, I had to focus on my cadence, and once I like focused on my cadence, I had like one or two laps that got slowed down. Once I started picking my cadence back up, everything, I felt like I wasn't really doing more. It was just I was more focused. Then my time got back to like the 146, 148, which isn't that fast. Like if I was doing like 400s 12 times, it would be faster than that. But the goal was to run a long distance, because it was my 40th birthday is next week. So this week I'm focusing on like the 40 number. I don't care that much. I'm not about to go out here and have like this huge like celebration. Birthdays are good, thanks mom and dad. But yeah, but I think you should acknowledge like some of these milestones in your life, and that's what this was. Marquette, and he talked about what he did last, I guess a couple years ago or something like that. Last year he did a few things to commemorate I think his 45th birthday, and sometimes you just do hard things to just show yourself, to get your mind in a certain place that you still can accomplish certain things. And what I learned from this particular workout was, to just stay consistent. Don't go out too hot. Pace yourself. Once you get tired, just remember, with the whole thing about cadence, it's like you don't have to go harder. Just like focus on your form, focus on your cadence, because if you stick to the script, you'll be able to come out on top. And I'm glad I did this. I'm glad I did some type of fitness activity to commemorate my birthday. I don't really drink like that. not to say I don't drink at all, but like that's not really like the center of my life. Um, my most of my free time is fitness. If I'm not, working or with my girlfriend, it's this stuff. So, and music. But at the end of the day, maybe that inspires you. I actually got the idea from the Running Public. Another shout out to them. And I tagged them. I posted something on my Instagram. And basically, because Kirk from the Running Public he also just turned 40. I think we're both Geminis. And basically, like, just do something, right? You'll remember this. You'll remember it next year. Like, oh, what did I do last year? I did, 40 laps around the track with 40 seconds of rest. So if you're an ultra runner, go run 40 miles, right? Like, do something, right? Go do 40 squats if you do 40 heavy squats. If you do strength training, if you're a power lifter, I don't know. Like, just do something, and you might inspire somebody. I hope that this inspires somebody. This headband, let me get into this headband before I close out. I did get a little sunburn. I would usually wear like a sweatband, and yeah, I should have put on some like suntan lotion or some sunscreen. I didn't plan ahead, and like now, it doesn't feel bad. It's just I wanted to make sure I didn't have you guys staring at a line over my head for the whole show. So I'll let you stare at a headband. So anyway, I think that's it. I think that's enough for the day. And again, you haven't heard from me in a few weeks, but I'll be back more frequently. I'll be talking about different topics, not just Hyrox. This is just a big time in Hyrox, so I wanted to put this out. And yeah, just stay tuned. Peace.